Hi, hello Nuria, how are you?
It's so nice to see you, Mudasir.
Same, same here. How are you doing?
I'm very well, although it's very hot and rainy here where I live in
Oh,
America.
really?
Oh, yeah,
There is climate hot in America too?
very hot. I mean, we can approach more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit and then rain and humidity. It's like being in a rainforest.
Okay, okay.
And then also it goes like this. And it snows in the winter. We have very big extremes here.
Mm, that's good. But I'm very thankful that you spared some time for us and having this live session with us.
Well, it's such
And
a privilege to be here with you, and it's a privilege to be asked. Thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. And Nuria will, the pattern of the this interview show is like we would like to hear from you from the beginning.
Mm,
Where you born? How was the family?
mm.
How was the relatives, your parents, siblings? Let us know a little about that.
Okay. And I think while I do this, you're going to be looking away, controlling other things, but doesn't mean you're not paying attention, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Well, I made a few notes because you never ask a professor just to start speaking without some end points and to keeping to the point. But I was born to a family that all of my grandparents were from Italy. And my parents were then born here. So I guess you could call me second generation Italian. I was raised in the tradition of a Roman Catholic family, although there was never, although my inclination was to always want to go to church, even as a child. There wasn't, and I guess there was an expectation that we would all go to church together, but I never felt as if I didn't want to accompany my family to church. It was always my joy. As I said, my grandparents were from Italy, and they, on my mother's side, were all engineers and had the trade as stonemasons, so they were builders.
Okay.
On my father's side, they were tradesmen, they were artisans, and my grandparents owned a shop here in Kansas City, which is where I live in the middle of the country in the US. And they imported leather goods, and my grandfather worked on leather goods. So he repaired shoes and handbags and satchels and such. From the time that I can remember, I had a very active inner life. I heard things, I saw things, and I learned how to speak I spoke in full sentences, believe it or not, at age 9 months. So I started trying to explain what I was seeing and I was hearing. And of course, this was just, my mother and father had this idea that I was just had a vivid imagination, or maybe I was a little lonely because I didn't have a sibling at that time. Or they thought also maybe I was bored with an overactive imagination. But I knew what I was having experiences of. And to tell you the truth, it frustrated me a little bit that the adults around me didn't understand this. But I'm here and I'm well and I'm happy. So it didn't hurt me too badly. When I was 3 years old, or just about 3 years old, I survived a very bad storm. They're called tornadoes. Do you know of the tornado? They're like a cyclone.
Yeah.
And I was with my mother, my godmother, and my godmother's son. And all the protection we had, we did not have something underground. We only had a table to go under. We went under the table. And first the house came inside, like all the glass blew inside. So it imploded. And then it exploded from the pressure.
Okay.
After the tornado passed, we had to dig, the debris from the home had fallen on the table. So we had to dig our way out of the table. And I remember my mother saying to me, as the storm was hitting, she said to me, "Well, this is it, kid, goodbye." And I thought to myself, this can't be the end. There's so much more of life. And I looked at her and I was puzzled, and I thought, no, this isn't the end. I felt a great confidence inside of myself about that. After we got out of that table, there was only one wall left standing on that house. And it happened to be the wall where our table was against. Now, there was a bit of a miracle that happened that day, and it further changed my life, because in my godmother's purse, she had a little rosary case, like a mala case for Catholics. And at the end of the mala was the picture of the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
And somehow in all of that destruction, from her handbag, the little rosary case came out of her handbag, got stuck in front of a little rose bush, and the rosary was dangling on that rose bush with the image of Mary just slowly, moving from the wind. And I thought to myself, my mother, my heavenly mother, was here protecting us. Because it was that image of the miraculous medal with Mary's hand stretched outward for protection. And I thought, oh, she's my mother. She's also my mother, my divine mother. It had a great impact on me. Then this really went to further confirm this sort of inner world. It was manifest in a very outward way, not only to myself, but to others as well. It really had an impact. And it made me go deeper into this aspect of prayer and sort of connection with this inner world. When I was 4, my mother and father gave birth to my sister. Her name is Cecily. She also goes by the Sufi name Mudita, which means sympathetic joy. It's a beautiful name. My parents, knowing that I had this very active inner world, again thought maybe I was bored. I needed something to engage me. So they decided that they would ask the school if I could go to school early at age 4. They said, well, we have to test her first. They called it an IQ test, an intelligence test. I don't remember it. I know there were some circles and squares and things, but one of the things I remember them doing, and it was in my favor because I came from an artistic family, is they put several colored papers and several colored crayons before me. And they said, we would like for you to draw a snowman. So I looked at all the papers and I thought to myself, a snowman? I can't draw it on white paper. I have to pick dark paper. So I picked a dark purple paper, and then I picked a white crayon to draw my snowman with snow all around him, little marks all around him. That's what I remember. So I think maybe that got me into school. But at any rate, I started school at age 4, very young, for here at least. I don't know what it is in other places, but I imagine young for everywhere. And it was shortly after that, I was probably 5, maybe going on 6. My parents separated. And I really think to my mother's credit that she always wanted us to have a good relationship with my father's parents and with my father. So she would make a point of making sure we would keep that connection, although in our younger days, we didn't see our father very much. And of course, life took another change here because my mother had to go to work. She worked some distance from home. She was gone 12 hours a day. And at that time, my sister was only a baby. She was 18 months old. So my mother had to find a way for my sister to be cared for and for me to be cared for before and after school. So we had a large extended family of cousins, and one of my mother's aunts, who had 6 children of her own, invited my sister, said, let her come here. She'll be with a family. She can stay with us. So from Sunday night till Friday night, when my mom got off work, my sister stayed with this other family. And then on Friday nights after my mother got off work, we'd drive to pick my sister up, and she'd be with us for the weekend. And this continued for, and I myself would go, the neighbors were very kind, and they said, let Stephanie, because that's my other name, let Stephanie come here and stay. And she can stay in our home until the bus comes to pick her up and the bus drops her off and you get home. So this is how our life was. We were while we were together, we were also very separated. It was a very trying time inwardly. And yet that again pushed me farther and farther into this inner world. I never knew anything different, so it didn't seem like I was suffering over it. It was just, I knew that we were doing life a little bit different than the people around us. So this is how it was until my sister got old enough where she too could go to school. And so I was still quite young. So for a few years, my mother would make an arrangement. She would invite people to stay and watch us for, they would get a room, and they would get all their food, and they would get a salary. And they would come and stay Monday through Friday with us and make sure we got off to school and were cared for after school, and made sure meals were cooked when my mother came home. So this was kind of our life. And, again, I want to give my mom credit because she never made a lot of money, and she worked very hard. She was very dedicated to us. And yet she never made us feel as if we were poor. She always made us feel rich, and we had fun doing nothing. Just going to the store to buy food was, we would make it an adventure, And so that's how life was. And then I liked school very much, and I also should say that I had an interest in other religions. So as a child, I'd say, Mom, can I go to church with that person? Can I go to church with that person? Can I go to church with that person? And she'd say, in her mind, and she told me, well, I figure if you're at church, you won't get in trouble. So yes, you can go to church with these people. So I'd go to church, all these different churches. And we had friends of the family that were priests. And they would say to me, what did you learn at that church? And I was quite young. And I would say, well, I learned they pray different than us, but they're going in the same direction. It was like, I knew that. It was like, there's only, for me, I always knew there was only one God, but we worship in different ways. It was very clear. So the priests were very interested in my observations, and they never criticized me. They always supported my view. Now, as I said, I liked school, and I was good at school. I was a disciplined person. But within a few years, after my sister returning home and starting school, I was maybe 7. And at that point, I talked to my mother. I said, for me, it's a challenge to have someone else in the home. They're not really family. They don't understand us altogether. May I take care of the home? And my sister, let me do it, Mom, and it will save you money. So she agreed to do that. And I felt very happy to do it. In hindsight, I realized I didn't have much of a childhood, but I learned how to be responsible. And I was happy to do it. And I was really happy to, my sister was a free spirit, so she was gone a lot. But, I was happy to care for my home and my mother and my sister, and to kind of keep an eye on where my sister was so she could also be safe. And we lived in a good neighborhood where the neighbors were really kind of watched for us too. It was really, in that way, in those days, very safe. It was very, very kind people around us. And they liked my mother a lot. She was always a likable person, and she never met anyone that she wasn't a good friend with. She just had that way, and God rest her soul. She passed away a few years ago. So as I got older, I think I was maybe a sophomore or junior. That's like a level. We have level 1 through 4 in high school before you go to university. And about 2-3 years before it was time for me to go to college, I tried to talk to my mother about that. And my mother said, "It's not possible for you to go to college." She said, "You have to learn a trade and you have to start working when you get out of school." And I thought to myself, no, it's not the way it's going to be. But I also understood my mother didn't have the capacity to send me to school. I mean, it takes a great deal of money. So I thought to myself, now's the time. You really have to apply yourself to your studies. You have to work very hard and you have to see how far you can get on that. So I did. And I excelled at school. I made very good grades. I was on what they call the National Honor Society. I was involved in different clubs and so forth. And I was able to go to college. I went to college for 2 years, and I also worked at the college. I had a great opportunity. And I worked, of all places, in what was called the Automotive Technology Department. So at that time, only boys were studying the subject. So I was working with the professors in that area. I was the only girl in that department, and it was a lot of fun. They took good care of me, and I learned a lot about cars, actually. I'm pretty good at diagnosing issues. When I go to the mechanic, I say, "It sounds like this, it sounds like that." Just have you know that? I said, I had the opportunity in school to study and learn about cars. They said, "You're really very good." So that was, you get lemons, you make lemonade, right? You know that saying, right? So while I was in high school, I was maybe a junior. I think I was a junior, possibly a senior, my second to last or last year. I was given a scholarship to a very prominent art and design school that was for college, university. But I was still in high school. So they had me go on the weekends, on Saturday and Sunday here, the holidays of the week. I would study at this college. And then I would go into my regular classes. So I was studying all the time. But I was learning about art and design, which I love because, of course, my family, they were artisans. And, it was my path. It was my...
Inherited this on.
Right? It was in my genes. So then, after 2 years of study, I met a man that I fell in love with. And to tell you the truth, that was 1975, and we were having a texting yesterday still after all that time. We're no longer married. We were only married a couple of years. It happens that he's from Nazareth, which he would call Palestine, but it's now known as Israel. And the time that I met him, he was a student here, an engineer, and his family had left Nazareth and had gone to Beirut. Then they left Beirut during the war, and they were in the United Arab Emirates. So I was invited to go and meet the family. And he was not Muslim. He was Greek Orthodox, which is very parallel to Catholicism. And while I was there, we talked with the American consulate about returning to the U.S. to be married. He said, under these circumstances in the Middle East, if you think you're going to get back there, you need to marry this man. So we were married. After 1 year, and it was a wonderful life. I mean, I got to meet all kinds of people, and I decided I wanted to have a job and be independent. So I worked for an oil company, again, with all men, and my job was then they had telexes. You're probably too young to even know what a telex machine is. But I it's the Persian Gulf because we were jobbing out engineers and oil rig equipment. It was totally a new world for me. And I'd make these friendships on the telex, teletyping to people to make these arrangements. And my other job was to go to a ticketing office for airlines and also the visa office to get visas for these engineers who happened to all be men. And of course, when I'd go to those offices, I would be the only woman there. But, it was an extraordinary situation. And it taught me so much about being diplomatic, about being patient, about how to behave in certain unusual environments. Mostly you observe, you learn the culture, and then you try to act appropriately. So I was thrown into these situations, or maybe I threw myself into it, but it was fun, and it was an interesting time. So I'm going to refer to my notes because, again, I want to keep myself on track. Let me just do this.
Yeah, sure.
After 1 year, we returned to the United States. And my husband then got a very good job with a government agency called the Environmental Protection Agency. I'm sorry to say it, that at this time, our government almost dismantled that, but it was kind of the watchdog to make sure factories and public buildings were holding certain standards and not polluting the air nor the waterways and such. So it was a very, very good job. And I thought it was a very important job, and he was happy to have it. But after 1 year, he wanted to return to his family, and I didn't want to go. I thought it was time for me to continue my education. So we talked about it, and even though we cared so deeply for each other, we felt it was our destiny to go in different directions. And so we were married in the Catholic Church. We asked the Catholic Church to please annul our marriage. And so we had the marriage annulled, and we were free to then move on in other directions. So my direction was to study further. And I had taken a job while this person was away visiting his family with a person at this very premier institution for art and design, who I didn't know who he was, but it turned out I was going to be his assistant, like his little secretarial assistant. He was a world famous designer. And he was the UN consultant on design, the World Health Organization consultant on design. He designed mass transportation for Volvo cars. He was a think tank person too, like he was a futurist. He was envisioning our future. I didn't know it at the time who he was. I just knew I wanted to work at this institution where art and design was being taught. Well, he liked me. And part of the reason he liked me is because I wasn't afraid of him or nervous around him. It was because I didn't know who he was. And I was a little sassy. So he asked me some questions and I'd say, yeah, I know what that is. And so he liked my attitude. You know, he said, she has some gumption. I'll hire her. She can stand up to me. So I started working for him. And then I really had this longing to go back and study art and design. But at this school, although I had a scholarship there when I was younger, it's very expensive school. There was no way I could afford that school. And there was no way I was going to ask my former husband for the money. I had to do this on my own. So when I told this, and the person's name that I was working for is Victor Papanek. He's very wonderful. He's also no more on this earth, but I feel him near me. And the things that I learned from him still come through me. And I'm very blessed to have known him and to have the mother that I had and the sister that I had and the father that I had and all the people that have guided me along the way. But at any rate, Victor said to me, why would you go to another school? And I said, well, it's about $20,000 a year's difference. I can go to another school for much less money. He said, bring me your artwork. Let me take it to the first year level study here at the institution and we'll see what can happen. So they looked at my artwork and they said, you're not level 1, you're level 3. So they put me in advanced placement and they gave me a scholarship. Basically, I didn't have to pay any money and I could stay in the city and live at home and I could work for this man. And I met all kinds of amazing people in the design world. And I studied very hard because now I had left this marriage of a person that I loved and respected. I knew that I had to put my heart and soul into my study. And as a result, I graduated number one in the whole class of the whole school.
Wow.
So what happened was I wanted to go on to school. And my mother was very upset because I was getting good job offers. And I said, Mom, I just have to go a little bit farther. I wanted to go for what is essentially my PhD in design. It's the terminal degree, but it's only the master's level. They don't really have PhD in design, or at least at that time they didn't. So it was the most advanced degree I could obtain. So I applied to these schools and I got wonderful offers. And one of the schools in Virginia offered me a full tuition, helped me with housing, and they hired me as a professor.
Wow.
As a student. So I was teaching, I was earning money, I was studying, and it was a wonderful opportunity. And I was close to Washington, D.C. I had a girlfriend that I had studied with at the Art Institute. She was living in Washington. I could drive up. We could go to all the museums. It was really a very interesting time. So after I graduated from I completed my studies, I moved to the Boston area in the northeast. And I really needed work at that point. So I started just calling people. And I ended up getting a job as they call it a freelancer here. It's like, it was per job they would call me. But then they ended up calling me for a lot of jobs. And in the meantime, I was designing. I was doing all the sketching, and then someone else would take my designs and make them ready for print, because it was mostly print at that time. And it was fabulous. They would send a messenger with the work and the specifications. I would do the work. I would messenger it back to them. And at the same time, I was hired as a professor at the University of Massachusetts at Dartmouth. I was just new out of school. I was maybe 22 or 23 years old, and boom, I'm already on my way. So
Wow.
I started teaching, and I never thought I could be a teacher. Although my professors, when I was studying undergrad, they all said, "Have you thought about being a teacher?" And I'm like, "No." And they said, "Yeah, you're kind of a natural teacher. Are you sure you don't want to be a teacher?" "No, not me. I'll have my own little firm. I'll have my own firm, design firm." Anyway, it ended up that when I started teaching, it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because, sometimes I'd have a terrible headache. Sometimes I'd have a terrible stomach. The minute I walk in that classroom and I started engaging with the students, I forgot all my troubles, all my pains, and it became a very happy time to be with them.
So you were a born teacher.
I was the best medicine for me.
Yeah.
And what a great career, right? I mean, to be a professor. So then, after some time there, I decided I would come back to Kansas City, because this is where my home is. I'm getting to the end of my story, believe it or not. What are we on time? Then we can have questions. But I come back to Kansas City, and do you believe it? When I was an undergraduate student, in the summers, I lived in Kansas City, and there's a very famous company here, and I think they're worldwide. Maybe you know of them. They're called Hallmark Cards. They're famous for greeting cards. Well, they're located here, and they're probably the largest employer of artists and designers. So I started working for them in the summers. I had great little jobs that I got to do, very creative, very wonderful. So when I came back to Kansas City, I told them, I said, "I'm back and I need work." And so they asked to see my work. Excuse me, I'm taking a little sip of water.
Yeah, sure.
And then I had also applied for a job at the University of Kansas in the neighboring state of Kansas. I live in Missouri, and that was in Kansas. Do you believe on the same day, I was offered a job by both Hallmark Cards and the University of Kansas? Now, this was a defining moment, because I had the choice. Is my career going to go towards industry, or is my career going to go towards education?
Right.
And I decided, I was so happy teaching, that I would go towards education, but with the commitment to myself that when I had the opportunity, I would also practice design, which I did. So I've done little and big projects, over the years, working with hospitals, working with museums, working with, I've done book design, I've done different things, magazine design, a little bit of corporate identity, and so on and so forth. So I've had a good career, and I've done both. Of course, along the way, as I got deeper and deeper into my own field, I started doing more research on cross-cultural communication. That interested me a lot, and how we use the language of symbols to communicate, and how that is. And so I started doing studies, in the Middle East, in Turkey and Morocco, that were based on kind of visual anthropology, in a way. This language of how we communicate, and how those languages aren't necessarily isolated to an area. They're part of a collective mind, you might say, divine mind, because we relate to certain things or forms similarly from culture to culture. Culture, excuse me. So I decided on going towards education, and all the while, never forgetting this inner world. It was like living, being very aware of a certain place that most people didn't see or understand, and yet also being here. And sometimes it would become very confusing. And I would ask myself, am I losing my mind? So I think there was a question. I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was about how did you get involved in.
I'm coming to that very shortly. Yeah. So I was teaching college, and here we have a break time in the spring. It's called spring break. So I had gone on a holiday to the Gulf of Mexico, down south, for a warm weather holiday to escape the winter here. And I had gone with my friend, Terry Erickson, and my sister, Cecily Sabato. And we were down there just having a girls' beach holiday. Now, we don't do drugs, we don't really drink. So this whole experience wasn't induced by anything than the other world, right? So yes. I'm sitting there and I'm having this experience. I don't need to get into much detail. It's enough to say that if you have if some of you've seen the cartoons where the eyes go like this, well, that's exactly what was happening. My sister's eyes were going like this. And I was having a very interesting experience of dissolving, like being in this extremely relaxed state of formlessness and then coming back into form. It was weird. And she was looking at me like this, like crazy. Like, I'm like, what's going on? She goes, I don't know how to explain this. I see you very clearly. And there's also a man, like a holographic image over you. Like I see them both at the same time. I said, oh, that's so interesting because I myself am having an unusual experience. So we decided to check each other. I said, when I feel it, I'm going to raise my hand like this. And you tell me, yes or no, did you see it? It was absolutely synchronistic. So my friend Terry was there, and she's an artist. She had pencils and a paper pad. And I asked her, would you please try to draw the man? And she said, I can't draw. I said, I know you can't draw. It's okay. Put the pencil in your opposite hand. She's writing it. I said, put it in your left hand. Look at the paper and just draw. Don't try to look and draw perfect. Just feel where the motion is. And when she got finished, there was this perfect drawing. And when we all looked at it, we thought, is this a god from Sumeria? We couldn't tell. It kind of looked like that. Long, kind of wavy hair, a beard, piercing dark eyes. And we thought, oh, this is so curious. We didn't think it was, we kind of just tucked away the drawing, didn't think much about it. We just noted that there was some sort of an experience. We didn't make a big deal out of it. And we didn't even question it that much. It's just like something happened. So a couple weeks later, I was with my sister and we were just talking. And we were in a shop that sells herbs and fragrances and things like this. And we were having fun and we were talking, oh, they sell teas, herbal teas. So we were talking about the different herbal teas. And this man comes up to us and says to us, I'm sorry, I don't know you, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have a feeling you should go meet the Sufis. And we said, the Sufis, what is that? And they said, well, they meet over.
What kind of species they are?
Well, it was so funny. Let me tell you. So the Sufis that he thought we should meet is a group that's here in Kansas City. And I don't know if you've ever done the dances of universal peace with any of the Sufis. You know, like singing mantra phrases, holding hands, walking in a circle. You know, it's a beautiful expression, but it's very specific. It used to be, at least in America. It now has spread around the world. And it's a particular order that kind of, you might say, was American-born Sufism. So he said, well, they do Sufi dancing. Well, this was in the 80s. And, you know, then there were these movies with the dancers with the big shoulders on their shirts and the leg warmers and the tights. So we thought we were going special kind of dancing. So we kind of dressed appropriately. We were really off base. So we get there, and it was a group of people, and they were praying together, and they were singing, and they were chanting, and they all had beads around their neck. And I thought, oh my God, this is some sort of cult. I'm not going in there. Forget it. And my sister said, you know, we've come this far. Let's go see it. And there was a man inside, and he said, I can tell you feel a little uneasy. You know, just come in and sit. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to talk to anyone. If you're not comfortable, then just leave after a little while, but try. Well, the people were all so lovely. And the most important part is we looked across the room, and there was a photo of a man. And the picture we recognized as the same image that my sister had drawn. And we thought we were destined to come here. So we go and we stay. And we knew something was there for us because it was unmistakable that the person or being that had appeared to us when we were on our holiday was here in a photograph in the room. So we decided we would stay, and we stayed, and we stayed, and we kept learning and reading and studying. And that person's name that came when we were on holiday, and then we saw in the photo, is Hazrat Inayat Khan. He was Indian born, but spent most of his adult life in the West teaching a Sufi message. He founded the Sufi movement. And you know about the Sufi movement, brother, you know, because of Murshid Karim, who was our mutual friend.
Yeah.
So this was the beginning. About 1 year later, there was an opportunity in another state to the south of us to go on retreat and meet an American-born Murshida. I don't know why, I just had to go. And when I went to meet her, I was very touched by her teachings and the clarity of her teachings. At that point, she was in her 70s. Her name's Murshida Viracorda. She had met Inayat Khan when she was a young girl, and she had studied with the American Sufis in California. During that weekend, it was like a 3-day retreat, they did something which was called the Universal Worship Service.
Yeah.
And during that service, the subject was truth. And they had an altar that they had made, and there was a candle representing each religion, going back to Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and then one candle for all those, whether known or unknown.
Yeah.
And when we read from each of those books, it was clear the message was the same, but it came through different messengers. And the words came into my mind, I'm home. I'm home. So this was when I asked for initiation, and I started studying. I was on a very fast path with Murshida Vera. Within the next year, I had met the son, the elder son of Hazrat Inayat Khan, named Pir-o-Murshid Inayat Khan.
Father of Pir-Zia, I guess, right?
He's the father of Pir-Zia, yes. Mm-hmm. And I had studied with him. I had gone to a retreat with him in Switzerland, and after that, I was asked to actually offer some teachings on a special subject of Murshid's dealing with sacred symbology.
Yeah.
So I was invited into that inner circle rather quickly after my initiation, and within 3 years of that, I was asked to become a guide to other people and to have a center. I didn't feel prepared for it. I wanted to say no, because I was just new myself. I felt like there's so much to be gained. But my teacher, Murshida Vera, said to me, Pir Vilayat calling you. You have to say yes. And she said to me, I promise you, whatever you need to know, you will know it when you need to know it. You have to trust God. You have to trust that. So I proceeded. It wasn't too much longer after that. I was asked by another Sufi woman to help co-direct a sacred pilgrimage to India. And that pilgrimage, the purpose of the pilgrimage was for professional women here in the United States to go to India to meet professional women there. So we were educators, doctors, lawyers, and so forth. And we went there to meet with holy women that were heads of ashrams or spiritual centers, social workers, educators, doctors, and so forth. It was to have this dialogue. While we were there, we visited various parts of India, and we also went to the northern part where the Dalai Lama lives, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And in that tradition, as you may or may not know, they have what is called oracles. So they enter a trance-like state and they transmit a deity. It's a very special role that these people play, and we were invited to meet with the state oracle's male and a male deity, but this oracle had very close ties with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and His Holiness's brother, Taxter Rinpoche. So we were invited to meet with her because she was a woman, and we were invited to go, and we each could ask one question, which was then recorded and by monks on a recorder, and they translated for us. During that time was another pivotal moment for me because something also happened to me. I kind of lost consciousness, and it felt like I had died. I felt like I had crossed over some threshold, which was an entirely pleasant experience. It made me no longer afraid of death, and it made me embrace life in a different way. It took me a while to come back. People were screaming and throwing cold water on me and dragging me to the shower to try to arouse me, and I was just gone. All I remember was a sense of infinite light and relaxation. The last thought I had before I entered completely that state was, why are people afraid to die? It's the most natural part of life. It was like the ultimate release. So, and it just felt like it was a transition. It wasn't the end or the beginning of anything. It was just part of a cycle. So when I came back, I was then very ill. My body had to cope with the situation. And my friend Terry Erickson, I think, is probably listening to this. I will ever be grateful to her because she was with this pilgrimage, and the pilgrimage had to move on, and I could not leave the bed. I had become so weak. Within a week, I lost 14 pounds. I couldn't eat. I didn't want to drink. It was amazing. But I'll tell you, such great blessings come from these times. First of all, it showed me another part of this inner world, or a continuum of this world. The other thing that it did was it showed me the great compassion and generosity of those who are steeped in the Buddhist tradition, because they treated me like their very own child. The monks and the nuns came to the room trying to bring fresh food, water. They'd offer massage. They'd try to help bathe me. They'd chant all the time. And there were also Indian villagers that were there. So kind, so generous, trying to help. I mean, just to be loved like their child, and I was like a child because I was rather helpless at that point. And then they took word to the Dalai Lama's private office. There's an American here. She's going through this experience. It happened while she was seeing the oracle. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama sent his private physician to take care of him. And this physician is also a lama, a physician, and a great healer. And so his first questions to me are, what are your spiritual practices? Because they believe that these these kinds of experiences are blessings. They're a purification of one's karma. They're opening to another world, and they are a blessing of sorts. And that was such an important thing for me to hear, because I literally thought I was just dying, and I thought, oh, this is a blessing. It totally reframed it. It helped me understand that I had a purpose to be here, and I had to kind of work my way back. The situation was, though, I asked the people at the hotel, can you take all the furniture, everything out of the room except for the bed? Because I was a little bit, it felt like I understood what it was like to be a chair and a fork and the wall. I mean, and I kept saying the doctor's name was Dr. Yishi Dondon. And I said to Dr. Dondon, I said, please, you have to help me. If I go to America and I tell them that I know what it's like to be a fork, they're going to put me in a hospital. I'm not going to get out of it. They're going to think I'm going crazy. So I said, please, you have to help me. If I'm supposed to be here, then you have to help me get it together to go back and not be like a crazy woman. So he did. He was very kind, and he's always been very kind ever since then. And I was under his care for quite some time. At the same time, I had met just before going into this total. Well, I had first gone into that experience, but there was a teacher we were all supposed to see as a group, and his name is His Eminence Garje Khamtul Rinpoche. And like the name of my first initiator that drew me to her and that weekend retreat, that name drew me to him. I knew I had to go meet him. I couldn't even sit up. I was so sick. So two ladies held me up in a chair because I couldn't sit up by myself, and they holding my head up. I really had to be there. I wanted to get that blessing. I knew it was something very, very important. And he was giving the initiation of Green Tara. Green Tara is the active principle of the Buddhas and said to be the mother of all Buddhas. And so I just felt a deep connection to it. And I also, as we were leaving, I couldn't walk. So I rolled out of the chair and crawled over and asked for someone to please explain I was sick. And he had also said to me, you're not sick. This is a great blessing. It's a great blessing. So these two men were keeping me on this track. And Dr. Yeshi Dondon kept asking me, what was my inner world like? It was a fantastical experience, I have to tell you, very beautiful inner world, but great suffering outwardly. My temperature was so high it couldn't be measured. My skin started to bubble and burn, like I was burning from the inside. And I was very ill at the same time. So there were these two juxtapositions, what was going on inwardly and sort of the trauma that the body was going through. Eventually, I got better. I got strong enough to come back home. But at that point, perhaps because of the high fever, my memory had been erased. I couldn't remember people. There were aspects of my profession I couldn't remember. It was a very, it was a very interesting time. So I also felt, I didn't feel like I quite belonged in America. I knew there was something back with the Tibetans that I needed to learn from Tibetan Buddhism, from this experience. I thought if I don't find my way back there, I'll forever be splintered. Like not together, like fragments. So when I came home, I turned the TV on, and I turned it on to the Discover Channel. You get the Discover Channel there?
Yeah.
And there was this show about the Dalai Lama. First show I saw after this whole experience. And the Dalai Lama was asking His Eminence Garje Khamtul Rinpoche to go to Mustang, a small kingdom within the boundaries of Tibet, and get 2 children from that kingdom to bring back to India for an education so that then they could return and go back to teach. And I thought, oh my God, these great beings, they communicate with you however they can. It was through the TV. So I said, oh, this is for sure the confirmation. I have to go back and study. So At that time, I was married to another lovely gentleman who also I was in contact with just yesterday, and he was from this local Sufi community. And I decided to go back just for a summer at first, and that was okay. But when I came back, I decided that I had to return for a longer period of time to really study and integrate this experience. And I had respectfully asked Pir Vilayat if I may be relieved of my responsibilities as a center leader. I wrote to all the students that I was working with, and I asked them to consider this. I said, I'm not letting go of Sufism. Sufism is in my heart and soul. I will continue practicing this, but I'm also studying Tibetan Buddhism. And I said, it's now the time for you to ask yourself, do you want to continue together, or do you yourself want to find another guide, perhaps closer to you? I'll be far away. At that time, there were computers, it was all letter writing. And I think almost all of them said, no, we want to stay. The connection's with you. It doesn't matter. You do what you want. We'll stay in contact. So we all continue together. I eventually came back to the US, and I was very fortunate. I was sought after to work as a professor in design. And I said, well, a little bit, something's gone off here from the memory cells are a little gone. I'm not sure I understand or even remember all the technical processes. I'm sure maybe eventually they'll come back. They said, it's okay. You teach aesthetics and you teach concepts, and we'll get somebody else to teach the technical. So I was very blessed. And then I came back and I continued along this line. One of my Sufi mentors said, the path of Sufism is the heart, and the path of Buddhism is training the mind. And they said, on this way, these two tracks, you will go towards your destiny. So it was always like this. And to this day, I still do my practices from when I was a Catholic girl, my Sufi practices and my Buddhist practices. They're all together in my heart and in my soul. And sometimes I mix other things in if they come up. But those practices I keep with me. And I have very specific practices that were given to me when I was younger that I keep with me. It's the rosary, primarily. There's one main practice that my teacher gave to me, or two. One was to remember to be on the path of the Bodhisattva, to help all other beings succeed, and to also maintain the Tara practice, the prayer to Tara that I received an initiation in. And then my practices are also the practices that are circle of this circle that I have the privilege of guiding. We do those practices together. So we're all working on the same practice and supporting each other worldwide with that practice till we go on to the next teaching practice. So I'm almost to the end, and I'm going to check my time.
Oh, we don't have any limit of the time.
What's that?
On our side, there is no limit of the time.
Oh, that's so good, because I could go on and on. I hope people aren't bored.
Yeah.
But at any rate, then in 2005, I met the younger son of Hazrat Inayat Khan, Pir-o-Murshid Hidayat Inayat Khan.
Yeah.
You know him.
Yeah.
So,
such a wonderful man. Such a wonderful man.
Genuine, disciplined, humble, all those things.
Yeah.
Thank you for
very artistic.
Very artistic. A brilliant.
A brilliant composer as well.
Absolutely. So that's how we met. He was coming to the US, to our area. There was a conductor who wanted to conduct one of his symphonies as part of a program at one of the local universities, about an hour away from our home. So someone from the East Coast wrote myself and another person in our local Kansas City Sufi community and said, can you help? Can you help Murshid Hidayat or Pir Hidayat? Can you help him find some place to stay? So by now, I'm married to my third husband. We've almost been married for 20 years. So he's a great man. And we are all friends with all the other people that have been in my life, which is a blessing. So I said to him, Pir Vilayat's brother, Hazrat Inayat Khan's son, he's coming to the area. What do you think? He said, well, we're going to invite him to stay here, aren't we? In our home. And I said, well, I wanted to, but I don't want to impose on you because it'll be for a while. It's going to be 10 days or something. He said, no, we must invite him. So he was coming with his wife, Murshida Aziza, who you remember, I'm sure. And they came.
What a beautiful.
I invited him to stay. I was at the college. I'm telling you, at the college, I had the most beautiful office with the most beautiful view, which I hardly ever used. It happened that on this day, I was sitting in my office when the phone rang. And I could tell from the voice, it was Pir-o-Murshid Hidayat. And I said, oh my goodness, hello. I said, well, he said, can you help us find a hotel? I said, well, we could, but we have a home here and we'd like to invite you. And I like this. I said, well, let me put it this way. We have a whole level we can give to you with its own with its own bathroom and another room for dressing and for your luggage. He said, oh, in that case, of course we're coming to stay. So they came to stay with us. And during that time, we became such good friends. And we agreed with each other that although we were both rather intuitive, we didn't want to be put in the position to try to read each other's minds. We would rather just tell each other directly what we were thinking, what was on our mind and feeling. So we promised each other. That was just on the car ride back from the airport. And we never broke that promise to each other. And over the years, we became closer and closer. It first started out as a regular email correspondence, and then it became daily Skype calls. Daily Skype calls that would be quite lengthy and quite detailed and quite instructive. He was sharing. I felt like he was, I think at that point he was approaching 90, and I think he was feeling like I have to, I just felt like he was giving.
Yeah.
And I was just a sponge. I wanted to receive everything I could from him. And so we collaborated on some projects together. I designed some things for him, some books. He would always ask me to read his papers. I published a lot of those on the website that I oversee. And then in 2016, on Valentine's Day, you celebrate Valentine's Day there in Pakistan?
Yeah, but there is a social pressure that they don't celebrate it openly, and they don't. Everyone celebrates it.
Everyone.
But they don't admit it.
You must get flowers. You must get chocolates. Anyway.
Oh yes, I told you that everyone celebrates it.
Yeah.
But they don't admit it.
That's great. Well, anyway, on Valentine's Day, I got a letter from Murshid Karim Bash, who you know.
Yeah.
So it was signed by Murshid Karim. Oh, so loving. And such the Sufi movement in the Netherlands benefited so much from his generosity.
And me and Murshid Karim Baksh, we both started Universal Sufi Council.
I know.
And we worked together for long time. And he is such a beautiful soul. He's such a beautiful person.
Yeah.
So good to have his memories now. I'm proud that I have had the opportunity to work with Murshid Karim Baksh.
I know. Me too. He was very kind. And every time I was in the Netherlands, he always invited me to his home. He was always so kind and generous. I mean, he felt like a real loving uncle.
We met there in 2013 or 14.
I'm not sure. We'd have to go back. I bet you we could find that.
It was 13.
13. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 13.
It was a great day. I'm so happy. We met in the garden, as you remembered yesterday, and then we met again. We all went, the group of us went to the beach for tea. Remember that? It's wonderful. Yeah.
And because of my smoking habit, we couldn't sit inside. We sit outside.
I never knew until yesterday you even smoked. You were so beautifully discreet about it. You must not be a big smoker because I didn't notice one thing. You're very,
And
very
I remember
respectful.
that. And I remember that son of Murshid Karim Bakhsh and his daughter-in-law, who both were then passed away in that aeroplane incident. They
In
were there,
the
and
Malaysian,
at that,
they were
yeah,
beautiful. Did
yeah,
you meet the children? Their children also. The one
yeah,
dog
yeah,
was
yeah,
with them. Yeah.
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 And on their funeral, I was there in Holland. I attended the funeral ceremonies, and I met their son as well. It was so unfortunate incident. They were very beautiful people, and it
So
was
beautiful.
hard to believe that they are not with us anymore.
The day before the plane crash, I had tea with all of them, and they were so excited about their holiday going to Malaysia. They were going for the girls' graduation. It was
Ah,
shocking. It was shocking. But
yeah,
here's the thing: Murshid Karim Bakhsh was so steeped in Sufism. He took it up as a young man, and at the same time paralleled that with this great career as an economist, the
yeah.
Minister of Finance in the Netherlands, and so forth. But he was
Head
so
of the IMF, I guess, or the World Bank.
the Sufi message was so deep in him.
Yeah,
The He understood and could speak from that place about this passing and the meaning of that passing. And it was such an inspiration to see how someone can deal with such tragedy in their life, sudden tragedy, without warning in that way. And of course, just a few years before his wife had passed, they had been lifelong partners. So he was a lovely being. So it was my privilege to get the letter from him, but it was signed by him and Murshid Hidayat. And when I read the letter, I thought, in fact, I told Murshid Karim Bakhsh that summer when I saw him, I said, honestly, I thought someone had hacked your email and sent that message, because he had asked me if I would consider taking up the leadership for the Sufi movement alongside Murshid Hidayat. And I had my husband, we often sit in bed on Sundays and drink coffee. I don't know, it was a Saturday or Sunday. And I said, Joe, you've got to read this. I have no idea. This has to be a joke. So he read it. He said, it's not a joke. And I said, what am I going to do, Joe? What am I going to do? That's my husband's name. And he looked at me. I always sit on this other side of him. And he looked at me and he said, if not you, then who?
yeah,
Hidayat trusts you. Hidayat and Murshid Karim Bakhsh must trust you. You must do it. Even if it's for a little while, just be a bridge at this point. They're coming near the end of the life. You have to help if you can. So I took that role up for a few years. I was coming upon my retirement as a professor. I retired a few years early, but I had concluded my career. I was eligible for retirement. And so I retired and I took up this role for a few years. Now, as you know, I am no longer in that role. After 2 years, I decided to leave. There are various reasons, which I don't need to discuss, but mostly it was my own inner calling for freedom. There was a lot of, as you know, there's a lot of management that goes into
yeah,
to keeping an organization afloat, and so forth. I think we were in a good place when I left, and I felt like this was a good time to leave. And I've never had any regrets. I sometimes wonder if I haven't disappointed those two beautiful men, but I feel their voices coming back, because in a certain way, being free of some things has allowed me to open up to other things. And so it feels like the sphere of influence is opened even more. And I have a greater capacity to kind of commingle with all different organizations and not just be tethered to one. And it gives me a great deal of freedom. And freedom is always what I've sought. So
yeah.
now I'm really kind of here today with you. My dog, who's been very good, hasn't barked except for before the show. And my husband's downstairs working. I hope I'm not. He's on conference calls, but he's using his headphones because he's still on a work at home order. And in a few months, we have bought a property away from Kansas City. It'll be the first time where I will be no longer living in my city, my town. We bought a property on the beach in southern Florida on the east.
Oh, wonderful.
And we're looking forward to living there the rest of our days, hopefully in good health. And so that's where we're headed. But
so next time whenever I'll visit USA, I'll be
you have to come
retreat on a beach house.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we have extra room for people, so we'd be delighted. If you can get to Miami, we're just right there. So we're actually in what's called Hollywood Beach, which is between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. But Miami's an international airport. I think Fort Lauderdale is too, but from Europe and stuff, you can get to Miami easily. We'd be happy to meet you and host you. Maybe we do a program together. It would be fun. Sure. But we are busy at this point. We've found some wonderful people to purchase our home. I'm the third generation in this home. Only my family has owned this home, so it's a little bittersweet to give it up. But we found a beautiful family who love it as much as we do, and we think they'll be very good stewards for the next bit of life. And it's given us freedom to know who will be here and have a connection still to the home, and also to be able to leave. So we've been packing, and mostly we've gotten them to agree to keep actually most of the contents in the home, because we're moving is already furnished, and we like it very much the way it is, kind of simple and zen, so to speak. So we're making that transition earlier than thought. We're moving to a small house as an interim till the end of November, when Joe completes work, and then we'll be making our way down south. So that's our story.
It's a wonderful story, and while interviewing you in a session, I guess it's something very impossible, and the time has its own limits. I had so many questions to ask, but the story was, it involved us all. Uh, it was truly a journey of your soul, and so loving to hear about what you have gone through, the childhood, and the experiences, how you felt things closer to your soul. That is very important. Exploring soul is a big challenge which one couldn't do in the given life. I'm really thankful, Nuria. I'm really thankful. My prayers, my well wishes, my sincere regards to you, my friend, my Sufi sister. And I hope that in coming days, whenever you feel like, we will have one more session with lots of questions which are left today.
I love that. I would love that. I will definitely make time.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I appreciate so much your vision for peer talks. It's fabulous. The way you're building these connections around the world and across national boundaries, across religious divides, you're bringing people together. You're showing us our common humanity, and building connections of love and mutual respect. It's very important work that you're doing. I'm so proud of you, because I know these are things that you have held in your heart for so long. And as you say yourself, there's so many things good the coronavirus is a great tragedy. We know that in one way. And yet we also know that good things are coming from it. And one of the good things is your program, as you said yourself to me yesterday. It's just beautiful. And you have done, you're bringing.
It was an opportunity which I used to connect with friends like you, and alone me, I'm nothing. I'm just nothing. The whole strength behind me is a circle of great friends like you, yourself, and other people who gave me this strength to organize these kind of interviews and let people know about people like you who have gone through a whole spiritual journey. Let people know that how it was, how it happened, and what were the challenges, what were the motivations behind it, and still the spirits are high.
Yeah. It's the only way. But prayer is for me, prayer is the way. And I believe in being open to what unfolds through sincere prayer. And every challenge is also a blessing, just like this coronavirus is to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if we don't, a voice was inside my head when I was young, sometimes perhaps sad, maybe even depressed. And that voice always said to me, and it was an encouragement, just like the lamas telling me when I was quite ill and going through this experience in India, that it was a blessing. And this voice always said to me, learn your lessons well so that you can teach your children. And I knew that that meant something more than just children.
Yeah.
It became all the people that I've become connected with worldwide. And I never really had a desire. I always thought I would really have a religious life. And in a way, I really do. And I have a great husband who understands that and supports me. And he has his own very beautiful inner life. Raised Catholic, Buddhist by practice now, but still great devotion to Catholicism, and had great respect for Sufism and Murshid's message. And we're partners in that. And at the same time, I never really believed I would have children. It didn't feel that it was my path. And the truth is, I think as a woman, if I had had children, it may have restricted some of my ability to do what I have done in my career and in my spiritual journey. I wouldn't have had. I'm fortunate to have had the freedom and to be granted the freedom by my family and by those people that I was married to allow me to go on to these journeys.
And you have, by the way, so many children. You have so many children. The God's children.
I do. You know,
you have your murids. They are all your children.
They absolutely. And then when they write, especially the people from the Middle East or from Africa or from India or Pakistan, they always say, dear mother, oh, dear, my dear mother. And I love that, because it feels like that. So, and the students are amazing, with Facebook, some of them are finding me from 30 or 40 years ago. And it's like, they say, I never forgot this thing you told me. It's like so extraordinary. My husband looks at me, it's like if I got one of those letters in my lifetime, and you get so many. I mean, I'm really blessed. I've had a great career, and it wasn't without challenges, and it wasn't without, just challenges. But, if you know something, you have a goal, and you keep your concentration on it, anything is possible. Anything.
True.
And everything. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Nuria. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. And hope to see you soon.
I hope so too. And wish us good luck with our packing. So then we'll meet each other sooner.
Inshallah.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy Eid.